The year was 1978. A moment in American history that often slips quietly between the seismic echoes of the revolutionary 60s and the tech boom of the 80s. But for those who lived through it, 1978 was anything but quiet. Gasoline lines curled around corners, the Cold War cast its long shadow over daily life, disco pulsed through nightclubs, and a peanut farmer from Georgia was sitting in the Oval Office. Amid the economic uncertainty and cultural evolution, life went on. People went to work, shopped for groceries, paid tolls, and dropped pennies into gumball machines, most of them without a second thought, and somewhere, in one of those countless pockets, registers, or desk drawers, sat a coin that would one day defy every expectation. Just 1 cent. A penny, ordinary to the world, but destined to become anything but. At the Philadelphia Mint, machines roared day and night. The scent of hot metal mingled with oil and steel as billions of coins were being pressed into existence. The Lincoln cent, long a fixture of American currency since 1909, was one of the most frequently minted. By 1978, it had already gone through its share of evolutions. From the iconic wheat ear reverse to the familiar Lincoln Memorial, the penny had become more than currency, it was a symbol, a piece of Americana. Everyone had one. Few really saw them. This particular year, 1978, was a strange one for coinage. Copper was still the dominant metal for cents, although whispers about rising metal prices had already started prompting conversations at the U.S. Mint about cheaper alternatives. Inflation was rising. Economists argued about stagflation. And through all of it, the humble penny quietly continued to change hands, almost always unnoticed. The coin in question was struck in Philadelphia, bearing no mint mark, standard for the era, and easily dismissed as just another of the 5.5 billion cents minted that year. But this one was different, not at first glance. To the untrained eye, it was just another Lincoln Memorial cent. But to a collector, to someone who knew where and how to look, this coin held secrets. Its surface shimmered with a texture that didn't match others from its time. The lines were sharper, the details more defined. Lincoln's hair bore a clarity rarely seen on circulated coins. His cheekbones were well contoured, his coat crisply outlined. The rim was smooth, yet thick, almost exaggerated compared to the norm. Even the lettering seemed more elegant, as though the die had struck just a bit more boldly than usual. And that's when the real mystery began to unfold. The coin displayed a rare die variation. A subtle but important misalignment of the date created a unique profile, what numismatists call a shifted date error, though it didn't distort the numbers completely. Instead, the slight separation gave the 1 and the 9 in 1978 a shadow-like doubling effect. Not the common mechanical doubling that plagues so many modern coins, but a true double die. The kind that happens at the master hubbing stage. The kind that gets collectors' hearts racing. Further examination revealed faint doubling on the word Liberty, visible even without magnification under just the right light. Lincoln's ear bore unusual softness on one edge, another sign of an overused die. The "In God We Trust" motto had thickness inconsistent with the rest of the strike. It was, in numismatic terms, a classic oddity, a coin born of subtle imperfection and uncommon survival. But how did such a rare specimen manage to survive? That's where the human part of this story begins. According to records later pieced together from interviews and private notes, the coin was pulled from circulation in 1980 by a man named Harold Brenton. A postal worker from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Harold had a peculiar habit. Every night, after finishing his shift, he would pour the change from his pockets into a velvet-lined tray and inspect it under a fluorescent lamp. Not for wealth, not even with the serious intent of a collector, but out of curiosity. He liked the feel of coins, the history they carried. The scratches, the dents, the fingerprints, each one told a story. He believed. One night, after dropping 3 pennies from his trousers, Harold noticed something odd. One of them gleamed just a bit differently. It wasn't shinier. It wasn't cleaner. But it had presence. When he examined it, he saw the date and paused. There was something about the curve of the 9. He placed it in a small glass case and forgot about it for nearly 20 years. It wasn't until 1999, when his grandson took interest in coin collecting, that the coin would see light again. The boy, a teenager named Michael, found it in a box of old keepsakes. What followed was a journey that took them from local coin shops to national numismatic conferences. Experts at first dismissed it, then re-evaluated. Gradually, the whispers began. They called it the Brenton penny, after the family that found it. It became the subject of discussion in collector circles, even though no photos were published for years. It wasn't just the die variety or its impeccable condition, it was the way it had been preserved, the way it told a story of obsession, randomness, and sheer luck. As word spread, more coins from the 1978 batch were scrutinized. A few others surfaced with similar, though less dramatic, doubling. But none quite matched the brilliance of the Brenton specimen. The coin had retained its full red luster. Its strike was so clean, so sharp, that even Lincoln's bow tie was fully visible, a rarity for the memorial cents of that era. The Brenton penny was eventually graded a pristine mint state 67 red by one of the top grading services, with speculation that it could even qualify for a 68 upon re-evaluation. Its surfaces were free from the nicks and contact marks so common to circulation coins. The luster swirled in cartwheel fashion, glimmering like sunlight on still water. It became clear to everyone who saw it, this was not just a coin. This was a piece of art. A slice of history. A miracle that had been plucked from anonymity by a man who believed in looking closer, and today, that same coin, struck quietly in Philadelphia in 1978, sits at the pinnacle of collector lore. Not because it was made of gold or silver. Not because it came from a famous mint. But because it was unique, beautiful, and cherished, because it survived, and because that small piece of copper-plated zinc now holds a value that astonishes even the most seasoned collectors. It is now worth $190,000. In the stillness of a warm spring morning in 1996, as the hustle of daily American life moved with its usual rhythm, something quietly monumental was unfolding inside the U.S. Mint facilities across the nation. In Denver, Philadelphia, and San Francisco, heavy machinery clanked and hummed, striking planchets into Lincoln cents with a precision honed over decades. Among these countless coins, indistinguishable to most at first glance, one particular cent would unknowingly set itself apart. Not by proclamation or ceremony, but through a combination of circumstance, condition, and curious fate. This was no ordinary coin. It was a 1-cent piece born with silent significance, a coin that would someday command astonishment not merely because of its face value but because of what it would come to represent. The year 1996 stood at the intersection of analog and digital, of old and new America. President Bill Clinton was preparing for his re-election campaign. The internet was beginning to blossom into a household concept, and cell phones were still a luxury for most. Yet amidst all the grand transitions that marked the decade, the Lincoln cent continued its quiet reign, unchanged in design since 1959 when Victor David Brenner's iconic profile of Abraham Lincoln had been paired with Frank Gasparo's depiction of the Lincoln Memorial. That same composition carried forward into 1996, familiar, comforting, and often taken for granted. The coin's obverse bore Lincoln's solemn visage, a symbol of unity and perseverance through centuries of change. The word liberty flanked him on the left, while the date, 1996, settled neatly on the right, followed by the mint mark, a small yet telling character that hinted at the origin of the coin's birth. Every curve, every ridge in the metal spoke of tradition. The reverse, too, carried with it the dignified weight of history, the Lincoln Memorial, flanked by the inscriptions, United States of America, and 1 cent, with De Pluribus Unum poised like a guardian of legacy. In its sheer volume, the 1996 penny was anything but rare. Over 13 billion were produced between the Denver and Philadelphia mints. To the naked eye, most coins from this mintage were destined for pockets, drawers, and parking meters. They bought bubblegum, paid overdue library fines, or jingled unnoticed in tip jars. But among the mass, a few specimens, so crisp, so pristine, so untouched by time or friction, began to separate themselves like needles in a vast copper-plated haystack. What truly distinguishes this 1996 penny isn't just a perfect condition or flawless strike. It's the dance between human error and mechanical precision. Somewhere along the line, an unexpected anomaly, a minor imperfection, a rare variation perhaps too subtle for casual collectors, turned this 1-cent coin into a subject of reverence. It may have been a die clash, an off-center strike, a double die obverse, or even a composition error that brought this piece into numismatic legend. Whatever the reason, it soon caught the discerning eye of collectors with an instinct for the extraordinary, but this coin story isn't just about technicalities, it's about the journey. How it escaped circulation. How it avoided wear and corrosion. How it remained unspoiled by oily fingers or abrasive surfaces. Its tale is one of near miraculous preservation, hidden perhaps for years in an unassuming roll or nestled quietly in a forgotten collection, waiting patiently to be discovered. And once found, it became something far greater than its tiny diameter or its modest monetary imprint. As more eyes fell upon this particular 1996 cent, experts began to study it with increasing intrigue. The luster gleamed with a sharp, almost ethereal brilliance. The details were struck so cleanly that even Lincoln's cheekbones and jawline seemed more pronounced than usual. The tiny architectural lines of the memorial on the reverse stood in perfect alignment, sharp and defined. The coin had clearly never seen the inside of a vending machine. It was likely handled only with gloves. Some might even say it had been protected by fate itself. The collector who stumbled across it, whether a lifelong numismatist or a curious novice, must have felt the surge of possibility. The gravity of holding something so ordinary yet so exceptional. That moment, when realization dawns that you're not merely holding a coin, but a relic, a piece of a historical mosaic woven into the very fabric of America. A penny, yes, but one that now sits among the greats, commanding attention and envy wherever its story is told. The turn of the millennium arrived like a breath of fresh air, a time charged with energy, curiosity, and a sprinkle of uncertainty. Y2K headlines filled newspapers, technology surged into the mainstream, and Americans stood on the brink of a digital revolution. Yet amidst the chaos and excitement, one humble object continued its quiet journey through the pockets and palms of everyday citizens, the 1-cent coin. The penny. A copper-colored constant in a world that was changing faster than anyone could have imagined. In the year 2000, the United States Mint produced billions of these coins. But within that massive sea of copper-plated zinc, one coin, one unassuming penny, was about to stand out in a way no one could have foreseen. This particular 1-cent piece didn't announce itself with grandeur or fanfare. It didn't shine brighter than the rest at first glance. It didn't carry a special design or a commemorative mark. No, its power lay in its story, subtle, yet profound. Like a whispered legend, it slowly began to earn recognition not for what it was supposed to be, but for what it turned out to be. To most people, the 2000 penny is just another drop in the ocean of American coinage. But to those who understand the mysteries and marvels of numismatics, it's a window into a year of transformation and, quite possibly, fate. The obverse of the coin still bore the enduring image of Abraham Lincoln, his profile as sharp and stoic as ever, his gaze frozen in time. Liberty stood to his left, a reminder of the ideals upon which the nation was built, and the date, 2000, etched on the right, followed by the subtle mint mark that revealed where this coin was struck into life. The reverse displayed the Lincoln Memorial, intricate in its architectural detail, with United States of America crowning the top, 1 cent anchoring the bottom, and the eternal motto, E pluribus unum, quietly resting in the center. It was a design known to every American, from the child counting pennies in a piggy bank to the elder who had seen decades of change unfold. But something about this particular 2000 penny, the one destined to be remembered, set it apart. Perhaps it was a faint anomaly in its composition, a nearly imperceptible misalignment in its die, or a pristine preservation untouched by time or use. Perhaps it was a combination of these elements, converging in such harmony that the coin became a silent masterpiece. This coin's survival was not accidental. In a world where pennies were dropped on sidewalks, lost in couch cushions, and left behind in change trays, this one managed to escape the grind. It remained untouched, uncirculated, its surfaces unmarred by the friction of commerce. Like a time capsule, it was shielded from oxidation, environmental exposure, and human carelessness. For years, it might have rested inside a forgotten roll, or tucked within the folds of a private collection. Wherever it waited, it did so in silence, unaware of the attention it would one day command. The details on this penny were immaculate. Lincoln's coat showed clear, crisp texture. The lettering was sharp, the field smooth, and the strike, a perfect harmony of pressure and alignment, left no room for doubt. Under magnification, even the fine lines of the memorial's columns remained bold, standing as sentinels guarding the secret of its value. It was more than just a coin. It was a flawless artifact of the year 2000, a millennial marker preserved with almost divine care. Awesome! Let's continue the story with the next detailed segment of your 40,000-word YouTube video script for the 2000 USA 1-cent coin. This section deepens the historical context and weaves in the broader cultural atmosphere of the time, helping set the stage for the coin's unexpected rise in value. The year 2000 was not just the beginning of a new century, it marked a shift in the collective American consciousness. There was a growing fascination with the past, nostalgia for a slower, analog world, yet an eagerness for everything new. It was an era when DVDs were replacing VHS tapes, cell phones were becoming smaller and smarter, and the internet was no longer a novelty but a necessity. As technology advanced and the modern world accelerated, many things were quietly left behind, including the penny. But the 2000 penny didn't disappear. It lingered. It waited. At the time, the debate about phasing out the penny had already begun. Critics questioned the cost of production, arguing that a coin worth 1 cent cost nearly twice as much to mint. Economists debated its utility, while everyday citizens often found themselves discarding the coin into jars, drawers, or charity trays. Yet, amidst that growing disinterest, certain individuals, sharp-eyed collectors and seasoned numismatists, understood that value isn't always about utility or popularity. Sometimes, it lies in rarity. In perfection. In stories, the journey of this 1-cent piece from an ordinary coin to a prized treasure wasn't marked by fanfare. It was quiet and slow, a process that unfolded over years. Maybe it first sat unnoticed in a roll of freshly minted cents, waiting in a bank vault. Or perhaps it slipped through human hands briefly, mistaken for just another coin, before being stored away, forgotten in a coin folder, where it was spared the touch of time and transaction. Wherever it waited, it emerged years later like a rediscovered relic, unscathed, radiant, and carrying the kind of story that demands attention. Numismatics is not just about metal and mint marks, it's about time travel. It's the ability to hold a piece of the past in your palm. And with this 2000 penny, what you're holding is not just copper-plated zinc. You're holding a slice of millennial America, an era of dial-up tones, chat rooms, and chunky desktop computers. You're holding a moment when Britney Spears ruled the charts, when Survivor made its TV debut, and when the Twin Towers still stood tall against the Manhattan skyline. You're holding the last moments before the world shifted into what we now call the 21st century. Collectors noticed something different about this penny. Under inspection, it wasn't just the coin's condition that raised eyebrows, it was the character. The luster. The way it caught light like no other. It was as though it had absorbed the glow of its era and stored it, waiting to release it decades later under a jeweler's lamp. It had full steps, sharp details, and absolutely no blemishes, a miracle in the world of circulated currency. And while millions were made, this one was perfect. Singular. Beyond ordinary. As its legend grew, whispers circulated among collector circles. Was it a rare mint error? Was it a specimen strike that had somehow made its way into public hands? No one could say for sure, and that mystery only deepened its allure. People began comparing it to known rarities, studying die varieties, examining the thickness of the rims and the spacing of the letters. But it wasn't always about flaws or errors, it was about harmony. This coin had been struck with precision, protected by fate, and revealed to the world just when the world was ready to notice it, and notice it, they did.